5 years after leaving Blake, having fulfilled my absci, I finally no longer think about ending my light every day. I have a new lover and gave birth to a lovely son. On the day of my son's 3rd birthday, an interview with Blake went viral on the trending searches. He said, "I will only have one wife. And that is Aurora, who is also the mother of my only child." Along with this interview that became extremely popular, there was a handwritten apology letter of 10,000 words from my daughter, who once cried and shouted that she wanted to stay away from me, whom she called a psychopath. I thought today would be a happy day. It was my son Ryan's 3rd birthday. He held a little red flower and insisted on giving it to me, saying that Mom had worked so hard. My boss gave me a generous bonus. And as soon as my husband Leo received his salary, he transferred it all to me. So I bought a lot of groceries and planned to cook a big dinner in the evening to celebrate properly. But as soon as I reached the entrance of the community, the lady upstairs blocked my way. She looked me up and down without any attempt to hide it. TSK, Aurora, I never would have guessed that you used to be a wealthy lady. I was taken aback for a moment. And then I naturally laughed out loud. Sister, you can't make such a joke. I only have Leo. The lady upstairs glanced at me again. Check your phone yourself. Now the whole internet knows about you. The weather forecast said it would be 36 degrees Celsius today. But at this moment, standing in the sunlight, I felt a chill all over my body. I took out my phone almost trembling, unlocked it, and randomly opened a platform. I didn't even need to search specifically. The top recommendation on the homepage was the interview video of Blake. It was a clip from an interview with Blake when the new project of the Blake family was launched. The reporter asked about his love life. In the video, Blake was stunned for a moment. And then his face showed pain. After a long while, he looked directly at the camera for the first time and perfectly portrayed a deeply affectionate image word by word. I will only have one wife. And that is Aurora, who is also the mother of my only child. There was a depth of affection in Blake's eyes that I had never seen before. And the way he addressed me was also more intimate than I had ever heard. Aurora, come home. I've been waiting for you. After watching the video, I didn't have any positive emotions in my heart. All I felt was nausea and disgust churning inside me. I don't know what happened in these 5 years that caused such a big change in his attitude, but I still remember that 5 years ago, the last phone call I made before jumping into the river was to Blake. At that time, his beloved Luna was almost moving in with him. And there was nothing much to say about our relationship. I just wanted to give a final reminder to take good care of our daughter. But Blake on the other end of the phone sneered, "Aurora, don't act like you're leaving a last word before dying. I've seen too many of your tricks. You don't need to worry about our daughter. But if you can really die, our daughter will have a better life. After all, having a mother who used to be someone else's mistress, a canary who climbed the social ladder by getting pregnant, is a lifelong shame for her. If you can really clear this stain for your daughter, maybe she'll think of you a little bit better." The wind on the bridge tens of meters high was very strong. But unfortunately, I heard every word Blake said. I wanted to cry. But the cold wind made it impossible for me to open my eyes. I opened my mouth several times. And when the cold wind filled my chest and my heart turned completely cold, then I said, "Okay, hadn't fulfilled my obsession. I'll go and die." Blake's voice still didn't show any emotion. It seemed that my situation wasn't worthy of causing even a slight emotional fluctuation in him. "Then go and die far away. I won't collect your body. Don't forget that we didn't get a marriage certificate, so we have no legal relationship at all. If you still want to go crazy, don't come back. You've already brought too much misfortune to our daughter." I hung up the phone directly on the rest of his words. I had so much pain in me that it was enough to sink me to the bottom of the river. I really didn't want to hear the rest. When I jumped off the bridge, it was the first time I felt so relaxed since being with Blake. When the river water filled my nose, I didn't struggle at all. I had been struggling in the quagmire of the Blake family for so long. And I was really tired. I was ready to face death, but it was my husband Leo, a math teacher who didn't usually exercise, who desperately saved me. Since then, there has been sunlight in my life. But Blake, lied out a low sorry. Why won't you let me go? My daughter Daphne's 10,000 and word apology letter ranked second on the hot list. When Daphne was born, I gave her a nickname. Angel. Which means angel. I thought my daughter was a little angel sent to save me. But it was also her who pushed me completely into hell. My health was very poor. And I almost lost my life because of a few pieces of meat once. The first time I ate meat was when I was 20 years old, on the day Blake brought me back to the Blake family. The meat was very fragrant. But I only picked up 2 pieces because since I was a child, I had only eaten with a teacup, and that was all I could eat. But it was just this bit of meat. Soon after eating it, I started having abdominal pain and vomiting blood. I was directly taken to the hospital. And the doctor said that my body was so poor that it was simply a problem that shouldn't be found in a modern person. So I never thought that someone like me could get pregnant. That day, I stood on the top of an unfinished building, wanting to jump off. The name Blake had already become my nightmare. And I even disliked myself. It seemed that I didn't deserve to live. But when I stretched out my foot, my body suddenly felt nauseous for no reason. I felt so uncomfortable. While vomiting, I accidentally touched my phone and answered Blake's call. I didn't die and ended up in the hospital. The doctor said I was pregnant. The continuation of life at that moment instantly shattered my will to die. I didn't have an umbrella myself, but I wanted to give my child a sunny day. I touched my belly and thought this would be my salvation. With a child, there would be someone in the world who loved me in the future, and I wouldn't be someone who deserved to die. Pregnancy was very difficult. Every day, I felt so much pain that I wished I were dead. My body was so weak that the doctor advised me several times to abort the child. But I refused. Although in Blake's eyes, this meant that I didn't want to let go of the opportunity to become his wife. But all I thought was that I just wanted to have a connection with this world again. It used to be my grandmother. And after she passed away, now, I had something to hold on to again. At that time, in the eyes of others, I might have really been crazy. I was clearly in so much pain that cold sweat was streaming down my face. My face was as white as paper. And my lips had no color. But as long as I touched my swelling belly, I would smile. A smile from the bottom of my heart. I thought it was all worth it. After giving birth to Daphne, when I learned that she was healthy, I smiled for a long time. I was like a victorious warrior. This was the first time I had won a battle in my life. I thought I was great. The 2 critical condition notices during childbirth were like passing clouds. The newly born Daphne was very obedient. Watching her grow up day by day, my mood improved a lot. When did things start to change? From the time she could run and talk, she would call Grandpa, Grandma, and Dad, but no longer call me Mom. The person she reached out her little hands to was always someone from the Blake family. Not me. At that time, I naively thought that I must have done something wrong, so I would just love my daughter more. But until Daphne was 4 years old and had a strong sense of self-awareness, the question she asked me the most was, "Are you really my mom?" The little girl even tried to find all kinds of evidence to prove that I wasn't her mother. I would try to correct her and even show her the photos of my belly taken during pregnancy, telling her that she lived in there at that time. But Daphne threw the photos on the ground. Watermelon patterns. Disgusting. You're bad. I was too thin during pregnancy. But Daphne grew very well. And my belly expanded rapidly. There were a lot of stretch marks on my belly. So ugly that I would even look away myself. But it still made me very sad when my own child said it was ugly. Daphne would specifically look in the mirror beside me and say, "I'm like Dad. Not like you. Being like you is ugly." Once she seemed to be in a much better mood. And I took the opportunity to get closer, trying to build a better relationship with her. But she ran upstairs and soon came back with a photo. "Dad looks at this every day. This is my mom. You're fake." In the photo was Blake's first love, Luna. Blake stood beside her, smiling gently. It was a tender look that I had never seen before. Daphne's betrayal was the last straw that broke me. My mental state became worse and worse. Several times, I was so dazed that I couldn't tell the difference between hallucinations and reality. The real outburst came when the whole family was watching TV and Luna appeared on the screen. Daphne excitedly jumped off the sofa and rushed in front of the TV. "Grandpa. Grandma. It's Mom. My mom." Her proud smiling face was like a sharp knife piercing through my heart. Blake's father and mother smiled and praised Daphne, without saying a word to correct her. Years of grievances made me jump up from the sofa and rush over to grab Daphne's arm. "Look clearly. I'm your mom. I've told you so many times. I'm your mom. This is a fact that can never be changed. Whether you're unhappy or don't want it, it doesn't matter. I am your mom." Daphne was scared and started crying. She struggled fiercely. Blake's father and mother snatched Daphne back from my hands. And I was pushed. My lower back directly hit the sharp corner of the tea table. Physiological tears immediately welled up. Daphne was crying loudly and didn't forget to kick me, making me hit the corner several times. "I don't want to be with this psychopath. I want Mom Luna." The crying disturbed Blake in the study. He came out without asking for the facts and directly questioned me. "Aurora, what are you going crazy about again?" Blake's mother complained. "I don't know how she treats Daphne in private. No child doesn't like their own mother. She must have bad intentions and treat the child poorly." Then she turned to me and said, "I used to feel guilty that our family had never given you an official status. But now it seems that we were right not to. You just don't deserve to be Daphne's mother." Daphne in her arms suddenly stopped crying. And her childish voice was like the final death knell to me. "Grandma. If she dies, can Luna be my mom?" So. My leaving should have made Daphne the most satisfied. Why is she coming to me now? The person I loved the most hurt me the deepest. I jumped into the river seeking death. But I'm not afraid of water. In the first year, I was afraid of little girls. Especially those who called out Mom. To me, it was more terrifying than a ghost seeking my life. Isn't it better for us to let each other go now? I didn't just skim through Daphne's letter. In my heart, I was no longer her mother. And she was no longer my daughter. But I was still stung by a few lines in the middle. "Mom, when I was a child, you were jealous because I loved someone else. I'm sorry. Come back. From now on, I will only love you. Okay? I prepared a lot of gifts for you every festival and on your birthday. Mom, I miss you and I love you. I remember once on Mother's Day. Daphne drew a picture and said it was a Mother's Day gift. At that time, she ran towards me with the picture in her hand. I was so flustered that I subconsciously reached for a wet wipe to clean my hands. I even dropped my phone on the ground as I didn't hold it steady. But Daphne directly passed me by and gave the picture to Nanny Wang, who was cooking at home. I was still in a half-squat position with my arms outstretched. I looked like a joke. At the end of the 10,000-word handwritten letter was a family photo. Blake was sitting on the sofa, with a serious and even cold expression. I was sitting beside him, holding Daphne in her swaddling close. My eyes were red and I forced a smile at the camera. This was the only group photo we had. We had been together for many years. But there was no marriage certificate, no wedding, and not even a single group photo. I begged for this photo, just to show it to my grandmother at her grave and let her know that I was doing well and she could rest assured. But Blake mocked me. "Aurora, to me, you're only the biological mother of Daphne. There won't be any other identity for you. Don't even think about it. I won't be manipulated by you again and again. I will never have any relationship with a woman like you. I just wanted a group photo." But I received almost half an hour of mockery. Sadness, humiliation, and helplessness made my eyes turn red involuntarily. When I was about to take the baby upstairs, Blake spoke again and agreed to take the photo almost as if he was doing me a favor. I saw the bullet comments from netizens saying that Blake was the perfect image of a strict father. They thought that I must be a first-time mother, loved by my husband, and was so touched that my eyes turned red. But I was smiling happily. Many netizens wanted to switch places with me. But that period of the past was a scar that would never heal for me. I looked at the big words below the group photo, "Wife Mom. Come home." How ironic. They were using the photo that I had once begged for to ask me to come back. I sat blankly in the corner, as if I was about to cut off my connection with the world again. The sun was blinding and scorching. Beads of sweat fell from the tips of my hair onto my face and finally landed on the ground, gradually forming a small puddle of water stains. But I still didn't move. A chill emanating from my heart made my body freeze from the inside. And I was completely frozen. I was cold and stiff. Suddenly, a shadow was cast in front of me. When I tried hard to raise my head, the person squatted down in front of me. The next second, my forehead felt cold. Leo held a wet wipe and gently wiped the sweat off my forehead. Then he took out a small fan, turned it on, and let me hold it in my arms. He pulled me with one hand and picked up the stoutered ingredients with the other. Are you suffering from heat stroke? It's really hot today. Come on. Let's go home early. Our son has already turned on the air conditioner. When we get back, the three of us will eat that big ice cream. My consciousness came back a bit. I opened my mouth and made a dry sound. Husband. On the internet. Leo interrupted me for the first time. He turned back and smiled at me, saying, You mean those two who are trying to take advantage? It's not a big deal. As long as the three of us lead a good life, that's better than anything else. I didn't hide my past from Leo. But after he knew about it, he treated me even better. When we first got together, Leo was a somewhat wooden man. He talked little, was not very updated with a slow internet connection metaphorically, and usually, besides doing exercises, he was preparing lessons. But later, in order to make me happy, he started reading jokes and learning clumsily just to make me laugh. I held Leo's hand a little tighter, trying to regain some sense of security. Leo slowed down his steps and held my hand even more firmly in return. Don't be afraid. I'm here. My nose felt sour. Leo started teasing me again. Hey, heading to so wide session. Hey. I'm telling you. Our family has money. I don't want your little tears pearls metaphor for tears. When we opened the door, the room was cool, and there was the fragrance of flowers and the smell of a cream cake. Our son Ryan held a large bouquet of flowers and ran towards me clumsily, throwing himself into my arms. Mom. You've worked hard. This is for you. I immediately looked at the little piggy bank on the shelf, and sure enough, it was gone. Leo whispered in my ear. He carried the piggy bank to the flower shop and insisted on buying you the biggest bouquet of flowers. In the end, he couldn't hold it, so he got this one. Ryan pulled me and asked me to cut the cake. I put the first piece in front of him, but he brought it back to me. Mom. You eat it. You worked so hard to give birth to me. You're the most important today. Leo waved his hand in front of my eyes, and a beautiful gold necklace fell from his palm. Here. I have a gift too. Wife. You've worked hard. It's you who makes our family so complete and happy. Looking at the father and son in front of me, one big and one small, my heart felt as if it was soaked in sugar water, warm and sweet. It seemed that I had become the favorite of the family. Every festival, these two, the father and the son, would tacitly use various reasons to say that I was the greatest contributor. For example, the spring festival was like my annual commendation conference. On Father's Day, Leo would also give me a gift, insisting that it was me who gave him the opportunity to be a father. It was the same on QIXI Festival Chinese Valentine's Day. He thanked God for letting us meet. On Leo's birthday, he would always say that I was his greatest gift. He and Ryan always said how good I was. But in fact, to me, heading to land session, they were the ones who truly saved me. Just as my tears were about to fall, a small chubby hand with cream on it landed on the corner of my eye. Mom. Smile. If you're happy, I'll give you all my little red flowers in the future. Leo took out a small transparent bottle. Here are some golden beans for you. I don't want your tears pearls. I sniffled. Okay. I'm fine now. Come on. Let's eat the cake first. When I was sharing the cake with the father and son, there was a sudden knock on the door. Leo went to open the door. After the sound of the door opening, there was no other movement from behind for a long time. I turned around, and the cake in my hand almost fell to the ground. Blake was standing at the door. Daphne beside him directly pushed past Leo and rushed in. throwing herself into my arms. Mom, having fulfilled my obsession. I miss you so much. Daphne rubbed her head against my chest. Then looked up at me with bright eyes. Mom. You've become much more beautiful. That's great. Please come to my parents' meeting when the school starts. She kept talking to herself as if she was just a daughter acting cocathous lie. But I remember that when I was in the Blake family, my depression became more and more serious, accompanied by various complications. I couldn't eat. I became thinner and thinner. And my face turned yellow. Daphne shouted in the villa. Yellow-skinned skeleton. So ugly. Haha. Don't come near me. She took it for granted to use me as a toy to play with. I was losing a lot of hair. And she mocked me again, black baldy. So ugly. All the few vicious words she had learned were used on me. She never let me attend to parent-child activities in kindergarten. She would rather let Nanny Wayne go. Ryan dived at the corner of my clothes, pulling me out of the painful memories. Here and over. Carefully cut a piece of cake, and tried to give it to Daphne. Sister. Here you are. Daphne looked down at him with contempt, and pushed the cake away with her hand. She used so much force that the cake landed on Ryan. And Ryan was also pushed to the ground. But he didn't cry. He just stared blankly, seemingly not understanding why he was treated like this. Daphne didn't think there was anything wrong at all. She sneered. Such cheap stuff doesn't even deserve to be placed in front of me. When I had my birthday, Dad ordered a castle-shaped cake for me. It cost 2 million yuan. You'll never see that much money in your whole life. After showing off, Daphne wanted to hold my hand again. I pushed her away, even more forcefully. And Daphne also fell to the ground. I didn't even look at her. I picked up Ryan and carefully checked if he was injured. Ryan wiped his dirty little hands on his body, and then patted my back. Mom. I'm okay. It doesn't hurt. Daphne on the side wasn't happy about it. What kind of lowly person dares to compare with me? Mom. Since you left the Blake family, you've lost your manners. How can you be so patriarchal? Don't tell me you want to be a mother who spoils her son. It's so funny. It's true that poor mountains and bad waters produce difficult people. Such futile thoughts. If it weren't for you being here, I would never come to this slum in my whole life. I said. Then get out. No one asked you to come. Daphne was stunned. Tears quickly welled up in her eyes. She turned around and shouted at Blake. Dad. Do something about her. Blake took out the household register slowly. Aurora. The identity you want. I can give it to you today. Come with me. From now on. Mrs. Blake will only be you. With that haughty attitude and the tone of someone giving charity to a beggar, it was as if marrying him was a great honor. I lifted my eyelids slightly. Pick up your dignity and get out of here with your daughter. Blake was stunned for a while. Since he first stood here, he had been looking so confident as if he could already predict his victory. Now my attitude was like slapping him hard in the face and trampling on his dignity. Sure enough, Blake's face darkened. He gave me a warning look, and my heart tightened. The next second, he spoke to Leo. Do you know that your wife was once my mistress? She didn't care about her status and desperately wanted to have a child for me, just to move up in life. Oh, when her father sold her, I picked her up. Who knows how many people she had been with before that. Have you also noticed that she has a lot of experience? Leo was such a person with stable emotions, who never got angry or argued with others. But at this moment, he was so angry that his face was red and his neck was thick. He clenched his teeth and punched Blake in the face. You're a man. And you were once with Aurora. Is it really okay for you to slander her like this? If you can't have her, you want to destroy her, right? Blake wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, flexed his wrist, and was about to fight back. I directly picked up the fruit knife on the table. Just a second before he could attack Leo, I stopped him with the knife. Blake laughed, seemingly not believing that I would really do something to him. He stretched his fist forward again. And I did the same, moving the knife closer. It just happened to cut his hand, and blood gushed out immediately. Blake. The world doesn't revolve around you. Don't always be so self-righteous. Daphne quickly pulled Blake away. When she left, she turned back and gave Ryan a fierce glare. I quickly told Ryan, in the future, if it's not your father or me picking you up, don't go with anyone else. Our nice birthday was ruined like this. And I felt a bit guilty. Just as I was about to say sorry, my son jumped up and cheered. Yeah. We drove the bad guy away. We won. Mom. It's so much fun. Ryan looked at me and forced a smile on his little face, thinking he was happy. The silly child didn't understand that adults could tell when it was a fake smile. Leo took my hand and put away the knife. As long as our family is together, we're not afraid of anything. Obviously, Blake's strikes weren't going to end so easily. When I went to the company the next day, I heard the boss swearing inside. After scolding for a long time, she drank a glass of water and then started making a phone call. Ouch. Grandpa. I'm not your grandson anymore. I'm almost being bullied to the point of being someone's lackey. If you don't take care of this matter, I'll go and call Blake Grandpa from now on. I frowned and learned from my colleagues that Blake wanted to acquire our company. The boss didn't agree, so he exerted all kinds of pressure. I accompanied the boss to build this company from scratch. Why should we just give away years of hard work to someone else? I went to explain, but the boss waved his hand indiferently. Don't worry. With my grandpa around, Blake is nothing. He even made a big fuss as a mistress. I just can't stand his hypocritical appearance. All day long, I was hesitant about whether to call Blake or not. I didn't want to have any contact with him at all. However, I didn't expect that when I got off work, he was waiting for me in the parking lot. He stood in front of my commuting car, looking disdainful. Aurora, why do you have to live such a hard life? Come back with me. Isn't it good to be Mrs. Blake? You've always wanted this status, right? Last time, that man was there, so you were too embarrassed to agree. Now, as long as you nod, I can make you get a divorce immediately. After several years, Blake hasn't changed at all. He's still so arrogant. Just like before, he never sees the truth clearly and only believes in his own arbitrary judgments. He still doesn't understand that the so-called hard life he mentioned is 10,000 times happier than the life I had in the Blake family before. Blake always said he would give me a rich and luxurious life, but I didn't enjoy anything at all. He wouldn't let me go out to work, saying it was embarrassing. He called me a canary, a mistress, and a woman who schemed to climb up the social ladder. But I never asked for his money. He never gave me a single penny either. I made some income by taking drawing orders online. I could barely make ends meet. But he disliked my clothes for being shabby, and said the gifts I gave to his family were shoddy. However, I bought those gifts with all my savings. I gave out the best things I thought I had. All I got in return was belittlement. Just like now, he has once again arbitrarily decided that he is the one who can give me happiness, and that I will only suffer if I leave him. Seeing that I didn't say anything, Blake continued talking to himself. Think about our daughter. You risked your life to give birth to her and used her as a tool to gain status. Shouldn't you be responsible for her? Fulfill your responsibilities as a mother, and give her a complete family environment for growth? Blake, you're so stupid that there's no hope for you. This child is clearly the doing of your parents. 7 Blake's parents poked holes in all the condoms at home in order to have the next generation sooner. I only discovered this after I got pregnant and noticed something was wrong. At that time, because of Luna, Blake didn't have a good relationship with his family. I thought that since he had saved me after all, and I also wanted to do something for him, so I simply kept it a secret. Unexpectedly, having fulfilled my obsession, Blake misunderstood that I wanted to climb up the social ladder by having a child. What I got in return were more frequent and vicious sarcasm. Blake, what doubt a sigh. Don't put on that painful expression. At that time, if you had even the slightest doubt, you could have known the truth quickly. But you didn't. Every day I was with you, I thought about how to die as soon as possible. So, why do you think I would want to go back into the abyss that is you? After that day, Blake completely put aside his haughty attitude and started to humbly and earnestly try to please me and show his goodwill. He didn't care at all about my married status. Or rather, He didn't take Leo seriously. Daphne wasn't idle either. The more people there were, the louder she called me Mom. She also deliberately said, Mom, let's all go to the Blake family's annual meeting this year. Then you're the boss's wife, can give out bonuses to those employees. Mom, Dad bought 2 castles abroad. He said one for each of us. We're both his princesses. Mom, having fulfilled land session. Dad buys diamonds for you every time he goes to an auction. That one in the magazine is yours. It cost 100 million yuan. I had always been wondering why Blake and Daphne, who had wished for my disappearance before, suddenly changed their attitudes so drastically. I got in touch with my previous friends and finally learned the truth. It turned out that when Luna returned to the country, high-profile lie. All the glories, reputation, and achievement she had were fake. The only purpose of her coming back was to find Blake, the easy target, to get money to fill the hole left by her true love abroad. Once she got the money, she naturally ran away. At first, all this had nothing to do with Daphne. But the bad thing was that Daphne had firmly believed that Luna was her mother at that time and always pestered Luna. She almost ruined Luna's escape plan. Luna was also a ruthless person and directly wanted to sell Daphne. In the end, it was the most unremarkable gardener in the family who discovered it in time and saved Daphne. Only later did I know that this good deed was something I had done. At that time, the gardener's family had an urgent matter and needed 50,000 yuan. The Blake family refused to give it. But I took out my own money to help the gardener. So the gardener saved Daphne. Perhaps others noticed the change in the Blake family's attitude towards me and became bolder. They all stood up and talked about how good and hardworking I had been in the past. Now that they finally understand how bad I am, it's too late. I told Daphne that if she still wants to be with me, she should be obedient and not speak loudly in public. If she mentions Blake's matters again, she can go back to her own home. After saying that, I handed her over to the driver and left with Ryan. I felt a malicious gaze behind me, and I squeezed Ryan's hand tightly. If she dares to hurt Ryan, I will never let her go. I turned around, and Daphne immediately lowered her head, got in the car, and left. One day, after Ryan came out of his interest class and just took my hand, Daphne called me loudly from across the road. Her eyes were red and there was a sob in her voice. I didn't know what had happened. At this time, the traffic light was already red, but Daphne seemed not to notice it at all and insisted on crossing the road forcefully. I shouted at her to stop, but Daphne didn't listen. Suddenly, I felt my arm being tugged. I looked down and my hands were empty. A man on a motorcycle snatched Ryan away. Without thinking, I threw my bag at him with all my strength and shouted, "Someone is snatching a child. The person who stops him will get 100,000 yuan from me." In an instant, people on the whole street spontaneously went after the motorcycle rider. This was the most prosperous commercial street with a large flow of people, so the motorcycle couldn't ride fast. A smart guy directly pushed his electric scooter out and blocked the motorcycle. The person on the motorcycle had just fallen to the ground when he was held down by passers-by. And my son was steadily caught by a quick-handed big brother and wasn't injured. I held Ryan in my arms and didn't speak for a long time. My body kept shaking, until Daphne came over and gently tugged at the corner of my clothes. I turned around and slapped her across the face. "I will call the police and find out the truth about what happened today. You'd better not be involved in this. Otherwise, I will definitely send you to jail." Now that I think about it, Daphne, a child who cherishes her life and values her face so much, how could she run a red light and cry pitifully in public? I just didn't expect that she could be so vicious. Daphne was after all a child. Her eyes were flustered, and she ran to call Blake. I also quickly called my boss to ensure that the matter could be handled fairly. I could only seek help from my boss. Soon, without a lull sigh, everyone came to the police station. As soon as Blake entered the door, I slapped him across the face. "You're really disgusting." Daphne was after all a child. If someone was going to snatch a child and put on a show, she couldn't have done so many things on her own. Blake must have helped her. He really stops at nothing to achieve his goals. The boss told me that on one hand, Daphne wanted to harm Ryan. And on the other hand, Blake wasn't idle either. He exerted pressure on the school and tried to force Leo to leave me with his job and future. But the boss had already solved all these problems. Just as I was about to thank him, the boss spoke first. When I started my own business, no one believed in me. Only you followed me. I was so poor that I couldn't even afford to eat, and you and your husband let me live and eat in your home. I remember this favor. And my family knows it too. It can be said that half of my success is due to you. Speaking of this, he deliberately raised his voice. My grandpa said that he likes this child, Ryan, and wants to recognize him as his adopted great-grandson. In the future, if anyone dares to bully him again, they should think twice. In the police station, I firmly refused to reach a settlement. When I was about to go to bed at night, the door was suddenly knocked on. It was Daphne. Her eyes were fierce, and she started by questioning me. Why can't you fulfill your responsibilities as a mother? Today, you were all blaming me, saying that I did something wrong. But isn't it all your fault that I've become like this? You gave birth to me. So why didn't you raise me well? You just left me alone. Why did you give birth to me in the first place? Did you ask for my permission? At home, I didn't have a mother. They just gave me an endless amount of money. But no one loved me. Having said this, Daphne raised her head and stared at me fiercely. After a long while, she showed a malicious smile. I don't care. From now on, you'll be the one to raise me. Daphne looked around my house. It's really a bit small here. Then I'll live in the master bedroom. You can live in that children's room. As for that little kid, a child this small doesn't take up much space anyway. Even sleeping on the sofa is too big for him. I sneered, if Blake goes bankrupt, I'll raise you. Otherwise, don't even think about it. If you're not satisfied, you can sue me. But I have some things here. Back then, you told me to die and insisted on recognizing someone else as your mother. I also have the causes of my depression and the evidence that you harmed my son. I will obey whatever the judge decides. Daphne was so angry that she shouted at me, Are you really a mother? How can you treat your own daughter like this? First of all, I'm myself. Secondly, I'm my son's mother. As for you, I'm just your biological mother. While speaking, I looked at the black corner of the close outside the door. This relationship was something that Blake himself had decided on. I wonder if he's satisfied now that I'm saying this. The arrow that was shot back then has turned a corner and stabbed back at him. Why should I stand there stupidly, covered in wounds, waiting for the person who hurt me to come back and pity me? I just want to be a human being, not a wretch. I didn't expect to see Blake's parents. The two of them carried large and small gift boxes and directly rushed into my house. They had kind expressions on their faces and spoke in an amiable tone, saying that they fully accepted me as their daughter-in-law and that I would be in charge if I married into their family. Blake's mother looked at Ryan and said that if I couldn't bear to part with him, it would be okay to bring Ryan along when I married in. After a pause, she added, Aurora, then you can compensate us. Just give the Blake family a son. And you don't have to worry about anything else. I sneered. If you two haven't woken up yet. There's a small hotel that costs 50 yuan per night if you turn left downstairs. Blake, who had been hiding outside the door like a coward, finally couldn't hold back and spoke. Aurora, these are your elders. Show some respect. Now that their interests are affected, they talk about respect. When I was in the Blake family, did anyone ever show me any respect? Blake's father and mother left in a huff, and I had a conversation with Blake downstairs in the residential area. This was the last time. I thought that after telling him about that matter, he wouldn't have the nerve to come again. However, before I could bring it up on my own, Blake couldn't wait to say, Aurora, can you give me another chance? Considering that I saved you back then? Blake brought up this favor again. It was precisely this favor that made me work like a beast of burden in the Blake family. And I was so brainwashed that I wanted to die, believing that it was all my own fault. I didn't deserve to live. And I couldn't blame anyone else. But was that really the case? 2 years ago, I finally fully recovered and took Leo and Ryan to visit my grandmother. In my grandmother's old house in the countryside, I found a letter. It turned out that my grandmother knew Blake's grandfather. And because my grandmother was ill and knew that she didn't have much time left, and my father was unreliable, she used the friendship of many years and the favor of saving Blake's grandfather to ask him to take care of me. After entering the Blake family, Blake's grandfather was the only one who was truly kind to me. I was grateful and showed him even more filial piety. In Blake's eyes, this became a strategy for me to rise in status. Especially when Blake's grandfather made Blake's word to marry me and be with me before he passed away. It became a reason for Blake to dislike me. It turned out that Blake's grandfather was kind to me only because of my grandmother. Later, I found the man who had wanted to pay to marry me back then and learned an even more cruel truth. Whether it was my father getting addicted to gambling or his attempt to marry me, it was all designed by Blake. After getting along with him for many years, it wasn't difficult for me to guess his thoughts. He was afraid that I would use the favor from the older generation to be superior to him. So he directly reversed the situation and made himself my benefactor. He made me sink into the quagmire and then hypocritically gave me a hand, pressing me with this favor and making me obey him. He wanted me to be attached to him forever and never be able to leave him. After listening to what I said, Blake pressed his temple hard and didn't speak for a long time. After a long while, he looked up and asked me with red eyes, "Aurora, is it only when I experience all the hardships you went through back then that you will forgive me?" I told him calmly, "Do as you like, but I will never forgive you." Many days later, in the middle of a normal night, I received a call. It was Blake. As soon as I wanted to hang up, he quickly explained that he just wanted to hear my voice again. The wind on the other end of the phone was very loud. Blake said, "Aurora, I'm standing right at the place where you tried to jump into the river. I might be dying. If I don't die." I directly interrupted his sentimental words and threw back at him all the words he had said to me back then. "Then go die far away. I won't collect your body. Don't forget that we have no legal relationship at all. If you still want to act crazy, don't come to see me. You've already brought me too much misfortune." There was no response for a long time. Just as I was about to hang up the phone, I heard a loud splash. I ignored it and continued to hug my husband and son and go to sleep. The next day, I saw from the news that Blake was dead. I didn't have much of a reaction either. When I opened the door, Leo and Ryan rushed towards me. My happy life was still going on. Blake's side story after Aurora left. Everything in the Blake family remained the same. And I felt relieved. I thought I was right. Aurora wasn't important. What happened before was just an illusion on my part. Daphne insisted on recognizing Luna as her mother and tried to match me with Luna. In fact, when I was with her, I no longer had the throbbing feeling I had back then. This kind of calm made me a little scared. To cover up this uncomfortable thought, I tried my best to be good to Luna. I gave her whatever she wanted. But in the dead of night, all I could think of were the past experiences with Aurora. When I learned that Luna had lied to me and had gone abroad with the money I gave her, I even felt a sense of relief. When I heard what the gardener and the servant at home said, hope flared up in my heart again. The person I liked was indeed a good person. It turned out that I had misunderstood her or before. But why didn't she explain? I didn't even need to search deliberately. The top recommendation on the homepage was an interview video of Blake. But if she is kind and hardworking, I think we would definitely be happy together. I gave myself a day to bring Aurora back. I didn't expect that she would rather live in a small 100 square meter house and live a hard life than go with me. Did she still have water in her head from the time she tried to jump into the river? Later, Aurora told me that she knew what I had done. My first reaction was fear. I thought for a long time and came up with an idea. She always brought up the matter of jumping into the river. Well, if I jumped, I was the one who had won the city swimming competition championship. I had already planned that once I got ashore, I would turn over a new leaf, live a good life with Aurora, and make her the most noble Mrs. Blake. To show my sincerity, I had people control the scene and made sure that no one appeared on either side of the river. But after I fell into the water, my leg cramped, and no one came to save me. In a daze, I saw Aurora walking towards me. She was smiling at me. Was she coming to save me? But when she came in front of me, she said, "You deserve it." I smiled. Yeah. I deserved it. So, this time, I will atone for my sins with my Daph.